The royal family is seen walking down the stairs. A young girl describes her brother and his friends as childish. The girl reflects on her brief encounter with the strange boy. The girl and her brother, who is the prince, interact with other members of the royal family. Although she is surrounded by people, her gaze is always on the strange boy. The strange boy smiles. He realizes that he is different from the other grown-up boys he dislikes. The boy stands with a small black animal on his shoulder, with the shadow of a grown man looming over him. The girl reaffirms that the boy is different. A Prince Curtis and Princess Kathleen arrive and say, "What's this all about?" The presence of Prince Curtis and Princess Kathleen leaves the two people shocked and frightened. The men knelt before Prince Curtis and Princess Kathleen, trying to explain the situation. They claim that they were attacked for no reason by the barbarian villagers. He insisted that they were the ones who attacked him. Kathleen notices an injured dwarf. She feels that there is something wrong with the nobleman's story. Prince Curtis questions the story of the accused dwarf. Arthur comes to the defense of the injured dwarf. Arthur thinks the boy's story is a joke. Prince Sapin's bodyguard is angry at Arthur for speaking casually to him. Arthur grabs the squire's arm and explains that he sounds rude when he hears a lie. The squire wonders how a boy can be so strong. Soon Vincent arrives and he apologizes for his nephew's actions. Uncle Vincent tries to calm the situation by explaining that the other children had lied. Prince Curtis asks the reason for Mr. Vincent Helstia's presence there. Mr. Vincent Helstia explains that he was on his way to the square when they saw a group of children bullying the boy. Prince Curtis accuses the boy of lying. He asks his name and is surprised to find out he is Jamiel Trident, the eldest son of the Trident family. Prince Curtis knows that the Tridents are the main supporters of their family and Academy Xyrus. He is worried about the consequences that will be faced if anything happens to the heir of the Trident family. Princess Kathleen accuses Jamiel of using magic in public. Prince Curtis is relieved that no one was seriously injured. But Jamiel is confident that his influential family will protect him. Arthur asks Uncle Vincent to contact the director of Xyrus, Arthur Lewin, via a two-way communication scroll. Arthur Lewin talks to Director Xyrus to expel Jamiel Trident and his friends from the academy, and Director Xyrus agrees. They were all surprised to hear Director Xyrus' decision. Director Xyrus expelled Jamiel and his friends from the academy. Jamiel's mother found out that her son was expelled from the academy and demanded an explanation. Jamiel tries to explain the situation to his mother, apologizing for his previous actions. Arthur Lewin and Prince Curtis discuss Jamiel's expulsion, with Prince Curtis stating that there is no place for racial discrimination on the continent. Prince Curtis feels a headache and finds Arthur's attitude a little strange. Princess Kathleen ignores Prince Curtis. Princess Kathleen invites Arthur to have tea together. Arthur agrees. Princess Kathleen tells Arthur that she will see him at school. Arthur looks happy. Prince Curtis is surprised to see his sister being friendly towards Arthur. Princess Kathleen comments that Arthur is really different. Crowded atmosphere in the square. People gathered for an important event. Arthur is disturbed by the fact that someone is spying on the continent using camouflaged mana animals and recording artifacts. Arthur wonders if his decision to help the new continent was right. He considers the possibility of making a preemptive strike if they are enemies. Arthur's mother notices her son's concern and Arthur assures her that everything is fine. Arthur's mother supports his decision and Arthur thanks her for her support. Sylve, Arthur's mana animal, sharpens his hearing while Arthur and his friends are in the square. The wizards prepare communication scrolls to connect to other continents. King Blank later addresses the crowd, representing the continent of Decathlon, along with the kings and queens of the three kingdoms. King Blank later speaks of the enmity between humans and elves and the attempt to unite the races on the continent. King Blank later highlights important steps towards peace, such as the formation of a multiracial party and the acceptance of students from different kingdoms at Academy Xyrus. King Alduin Rain, an elf, speaks of the importance of unity in the face of unknown dangers beyond their continent. King Alduin Rain announces the discovery of another continent. The announcement sparked chaos among the crowd. King Alduin Rain attempts to calm the crowd, explaining that they don't know much about the new continent, but there is evidence that the continent's inhabitants are trying to reach them. The Dwarf King emphasizes the importance of unity among the three races in Decathlon. The crowd applauds as a sign of support. King DW introduces the Six Lances, 6 individuals chosen to represent the 3 races and protect the continent. Each member of the 6 Lances is called and given a ring. Arthur is surprised to hear the name Baron Wykes. Arthur Lewin is surprised to learn that Baron Wykes, the person responsible for the deaths of most of his party in his previous life, is now one of the 6 Lances. Arthur ponders this situation and its impact on the future. Arthur recalls Luke Wykes' betrayal and actions that led to the deaths of most of his party. He also realizes the power and influence of the Wykes family. Arthur recalls the warning he received not to take revenge on Lucas because of the power of his brother, Baron. He now realizes that Baron is one of the 6 Lances. Arthur is preparing for his sister Ellie's birthday party. Arthur leaves Sylve in his room and promises to return with lots of food. Arthur arrives at Ellie's birthday party. Elijah talks to a girl and accidentally spills his drink. Arthur's family arrives at the party. Eleanor complains about her outfit, and then her birthday surprise is revealed. Eleanor's birthday party is full of celebration and music. The guests drink together before the other events begin. Arthur's father thanks the guests and announces Arthur and Eleanor's first dance. Ellie is surprised that she and Arthur will be dancing. Arthur invites Eleanor to the dance. Arthur and Eleanor begin to dance. Arthur uses his magic to help Eleanor dance, impressing the guests. The guests applaud Arthur and Eleanor's dance performance. Arthur comments that his dancing lessons in his previous life are still useful. Someone approaches Arthur and invites him to speak. Tasha arrives without Arthur's knowledge. She comes only to give Eleanor a gift. Then she leaves and says, "I'll see her at school soon." In the middle of a beautiful garden, Arthur walks with a glass of wine in his hand. He seemed brooding and ignored the people around him. A man named Gideon approached him and asked sarcastically, "Are you performing in a one-man play or something?" Arthur reminds Gideon that he hopes he didn't sneak into his sister's party just to talk to her. Gideon replies, "Hey, I got her a present." Arthur replied, "Fine. Then to what kind of pleasure do I owe a visit from the No.1 artificer in Decathlon?" Gideon replied, "Oi, I can feel the sarcasm in your words." Gideon then informed Arthur that the council, consisting of the kings and queens of Decathlon, had approved his blueprint design and was in the works. Arthur congratulated Gideon, confident that he would be well rewarded for it. Gideon states that money, fame, and power are only means to his end. When asked what he wanted, a guest interrupted their conversation. However, Gideon continued, "What I want is something that even the council doesn't." The guest, feeling ignored, interrupted again. Pay permission. He introduced himself as a big fan of Gideon's work. and talked about the large ship he had created. Gideon claimed to be busy, but the guest did not give up and praised Gideon again, asking how he could think of using conflagrate ore as a propulsion component for a ship that required no mana at all. Gideon wisely responded, "Fame is only a means to an end, but it comes at a price." After the guests began to leave, Lelia approached Arthur. She waves and apologizes for not greeting him sooner. Lelia explains that she was late to the party and wanted to congratulate Ellie first. Arthur says that he knows how busy Lelia is as the secretary of the student council. Lelia ignored him and said, "Leave that aside." Arthur smiled kindly and said, "Long time no see, Lelia." Lelia blushed and replied, "Why yes, long time no see." Lelia stares at Arthur and wonders, has he always been so much taller than me? Arthur invites Lelia to have a casual chat while taking a walk in the park. Arthur says, "It seems that the girl who used to hide from her parents and eat with the servants has grown up now." Lelia was offended that Arthur made her precious hiding place into a joke. Arthur also praises the development of Lelia, who is now a student at the most prestigious Witch Academy in Decathlon. Arthur comments on the number of men looking at Lelia soulfully and feels that Lilia must be quite popular. Lilia blushes and denies that she doesn't have a boyfriend. She says, "Besides, everything in my life has changed because of you." Arthur responded in a serious tone and said, "Then I'll be more selective about any man you bring home. I won't be any easier to please than Uncle Vincent." Lilia immediately froze and said, "Oh, of course." Gideon asks permission to borrow Arthur. Lilia happily agrees, saying that she will see Arthur later. Gideon tells Arthur that everyone at the party knows him, and Arthur tells him to be humble. Gideon responds that the girl from earlier has a crush on Arthur, and he realizes it. Gideon teased Arthur and asked if he would do something about it. Arthur explained, "She is a person whose life has changed because of me. Her feelings for me are neither like nor love, but something closer to gratitude. She doesn't know it now, but in the future she will be able to tell the difference. That what she feels now is the infatuation a girl might have for a hero." Gideon is disgusted by Arthur's immaturity in this situation. Arthur says that he did not come for love advice and asks what Gideon wants to discuss. Gideon replies, "I want to use the money, fame, and power the council has given me." Gideon continued, "To get something that I can't get from anywhere else. That is, your knowledge." Arthur admits that he thought twice about it after he gave Gideon the blueprints of the steam engine. Arthur says that he doesn't want to change the way the world works any more than he already has, and the continent is fine without his intervention. Gideon, who only hears what he wants to hear, concludes that Arthur has more ideas for inventions that could change the world. Arthur feels that Gideon is only picking up whatever he wants to hear. Arthur emphasized his point. "Let me be clear about this. I'm not going to indulge your curiosity." However, Gideon resigned himself and said, "Well, it just came out without me realizing it." Gideon offers Arthur a give and take deal. He will not ask for a world-changing invention, but he would like to borrow Arthur's brain from time to time. In return, he will be Arthur's personal advocate for whatever artifacts or items he wants. Arthur agrees, and they shake hands. After the party, Eleanor receives many gifts, including clothes and tea sets. She also receives a gift that looks different and tells Arthur to bring it to her. Arthur reads the letter inside the gift. The letter was from someone encouraging Eleanor to not only look up to her brother Arthur, but also make a move to pursue him, and perhaps Eleanor could become someone strong and able to stand by Arthur's side. The gift was a bow. Eleanor cried out in excitement, "Whoa, it's a bow!" Someone commented that the bow was very nice and the design looked like it belonged to an elf. Reynold looks amazed and wonders who sent the bow. Arthur is also curious and wonders if it was from him. Eleanor clears her throat and demands a gift from Arthur. Arthur gives the gift to his younger sister, Eleanor. The gift was a necklace for her mother. Her mother asks where Arthur got it. Arthur replied that the necklace would protect them if his father or himself were not there. Arthur's mother received 2 necklaces, one for herself and one for Eleanor. Arthur puts the necklace on Eleanor and wishes her a happy birthday. Arthur visits the workshop where Gideon and the workers are testing the steam engine. Arthur comments, "You didn't have to bring me all the way to this place. You know." Gideon responds with some annoyance, "You do realize that no one outside of the employees and board is allowed in this facility, right?" Arthur agreed to Gideon's words, which he had already said 8 times. He is grateful and impressed. Gideon asks why Arthur said it with a bored look on his face. Arthur replies that Gideon is like a child who is unappreciative and looks bored. Gideon protests that Arthur keeps interrupting him every little step of the way on the steam engine project and says that a midnight phone call does not bring them closer together. Arthur tells Gideon to make friends with people his own age. Gideon says that Arthur's birthday just passed 4 months ago. Arthur says that his birthday was forgotten because it was close to Ellie's birthday. Gideon also comments on Ellie's birthday party, which was quite lavish, and whether your party was the same. Arthur replies that his party was not fancy. He just asked for a small party with his family, unlike Ellie's party, which was full of social butterflies. Gideon gives Arthur a belated birthday present. Arthur asks what it is and says that Gideon didn't even wrap it. Just as Arthur wants to open it, Gideon snatches it back and says, "Damn it. Give it back, Arthur just joked and opened the gift." Arthur thanks Gideon and says that it is nothing compared to the help he has given in the Steam Engine project. Gideon is curious why Arthur would want something that can hide not one, but two elements attributes at once. Gideon joked that Arthur might be a quadra-elemental wizard. Arthur casually replied, "I am a quadra-elemental magician." Gideon and his assistant were surprised. Gideon questions the seriousness of Arthur being a quadra-elemental. He deduced that Arthur wanted the bracelet to hide his attributes and asked why Arthur told him. Arthur replies lightly, "Because the more you know how special I am, the more free stuff I get." Gideon calls Arthur crazy for telling world-shattering news so casually. Gideon says that he wants proof and Arthur replies, "Yes, gladly." Arthur praises Gideon's speed in building the steamboat. Gideon said that it would be ready to sail on Arthur's first day of school. Arthur remembered how happy he was on his first day at school. This ship will be ready to sail. Arthur realized that Gideon worked very fast, completing the steam engine in just a few months. He thought to himself, if the new continent is the enemy, then I must not train half-heartedly. With the artifacts Gideon gave me, I must try and strive for wind and earth to match my fire and water. Arthur bumps into someone and apologizes. The man, a professor from Xyrus Academy, reprimands Arthur for not paying attention to the road. Arthur is upset because he often meets lowlifes. The professor confirmed Arthur's words that he was used to magic, but if Arthur was a student at his school, he had better hide because the professor beat up an undisciplined person like Arthur. Arthur said he would look forward to it. The professor and his friends are confused because the pendant is missing, even though they didn't see Arthur take it. Arthur returns home and is greeted by his sister, Ellie, who shows off her new bow. Arthur says that he is home. Arthur asks where his mom and dad are. Ellie replies that they are in the living room with Elijah. Ellie also told him that they got a package from Xyrus Academy. Arthur's father welcomes him and tells him to look at the school uniforms they just received. Arthur's mother gives Arthur a package from Xyrus Academy. Arthur thought to himself, from an orphan to a king. A baby, then an adventurer. It seems I'm finally a student now. Elijah and Ellie look happy. Tesha looks at Arthur's family photo and smiles. Arthur looks happy to receive the package from Xyrus Academy and thinks, how much more can this world teach me? In a room, Art is still fast asleep. Elijah tries to wake him up by shaking his leg and telling him to get up because they will be late. Sylvie is seen curled up next to Art. Elijah complains impatiently as they can't be late for their first day at school. Sylvie wakes up and she suddenly jumps on Elijah. Sylvie suddenly attacks him and Elijah screams in pain. Art, now sitting on his bed, looking sleepy and dazed, says that he is awake. He promises to be ready in 5 minutes. Art, standing shirtless in front of the mirror, is getting ready. Elijah, standing next to him, observes. Al asks Art why he chose to attend Xyrus Academy as an academic wizard, when Al suggested that Art should learn more about magic theory by taking elective courses and not focus his entire academic life on it. Art replied that fighting against kids his own age didn't really interest him. He also added that he would still take some of the combat magician classes. Al is worried that Art will be looked down upon by the battle mage students at Xyrus Academy. Art teases him and asks if Al is worried about him. Al replied sarcastically that what she was worried about were the students who would be sent to the medical room for looking down on Art. Art laughs in response to Elle's concern, then reassures her not to worry. He is then seen putting on his school uniform. Afterwards, Art and Elle are already sitting at the dining table with a brown-haired woman Alice and a light brown-haired man Reynolds. Alice told them to eat quickly. A little girl with light brown hair, Ellie, complains that this is unfair because she also wants to go to Xyrus. Arthur tells Ellie to stop being lazy in her training if she wants to go to Xyrus too. Elle then asks Alice if she can heal the wound on her face. Alice asks what Sylvie is doing this time. Reynolds, proudly saying that Art made it into the famous Zyrus Academy, praises himself and Alice for Art's success. Alice disagrees, saying that she was the one who raised Art. Reynolds countered that the only time he raised his children was when they got into trouble. Elle responds, "Just so you know." Art says goodbye to his parents, promising to come home whenever he can. He tells Ellie to be good and take care of their parents. Ellie simply replies, "Yes, yes," before leaving. Art reminds Ellie to always wear the pendant he gave her. Art gets on the train with Sylvie. Ellie asks if there are no last words for her father. Art tells Reynolds not to burn down the house while practicing. Reynolds calls Art a bad boy. Art and Sylvie arrive at Zyrus Academy. Sylvie screams with excitement. The magnificent gates of the academy open, revealing the grounds and the main building filled with new students. Some of the students are seen arriving on their mounts, such as a large red bird and blue and green birds. An officer in an academy uniform directs the new students to form a line in front of the main white building. He tells them that attendance at the admission ceremony is mandatory. The students enter the magnificent auditorium, filled with low, boisterous voices. An officer calls out the name of Elijah Knight, a combat magician candidate with an affinity for earth magic. After that, Arthur Lewin is called. The officer looked surprised when he found out that Arthur was an academician magician candidate with dual affinity for earth and wind magic. Art confirmed that it was him who was called. Elle explains to Art that the officer was surprised that Art only has two magic elements. The officer nervously denied and told Art to continue. Art and Elle enter the packed auditorium. Elle comments that she didn't expect it to be this crowded. Art agrees, saying that there don't seem to be many seats left. The low noise gets louder as they look for a seat. Art and Elle break through the crowd, apologizing and excusing themselves to pass. Some students seem intimidated by them. Art and Elle finally find a seat next to some other students. Art comments on how noisy kids his age are. Suddenly, there is a magic that comes out from the stage, making everyone silent for a moment. A gray-haired old woman with a large witch's hat and white robes appeared on the stage. She winks at Art. Art looks a little surprised. The woman snapped her fingers. Instantly, there was silence in the auditorium. Art and Elle are surprised by the woman's ability. The woman apologizes for her impoliteness because she doesn't like to speak out loud. She explains that it is not good for her throat, especially in her old age. The woman begins to speak, welcoming the new students to the academy and referring to them as future leaders, scholars, and powers of Decathlon. She then introduces herself as Director Cynthia Goodsky. Director Goodsky said that although she had considered giving a long and boring speech, she realized that this year was a special year. Director Goodsky proudly announced that the academy had never had so many elves and dwarves in attendance as this year. The students applaud. Director Goodsky introduces the student council members of Zyrus Academy. The students applaud again. Elle and his friends are excited to see Tesha, a student council member, take the stage. They cheer for him. Elijah is impressed by Tesha's appearance. He asks Arthur who she is. Sylvie interrupts enthusiastically. Then Art smiles a little. Art says it's been a while, Tess. A girl named Tesha, who was a direct student of Director Goodsky, became the talk of the campus. Director Goodsky was famous for never accepting students, so Tesha was considered very talented. Plus, she was beautiful, despite being rumored to be super cold and strict. In the middle of the admissions speech, Tesha stands on stage, watched by the new students, including a young man who is curious about how to attract the princess. Tesha introduces herself as Tesha Iralith, the student council president. She congratulated the freshmen on being accepted into the best magic academy on the continent. Despite being a freshman like them, Tesha had already observed the academy for a year. In addition to seeing the lessons and the bonds formed at the academy, Tesha also witnessed the discrimination faced by wizards, especially academic wizards. She worries about the divisions that may arise between the various races because of the difference in uniforms alone. Tesha urges the new students to put aside the mindset of the older generation that fosters hostility between races. Just as the royal family united to form the council, Tesha hoped the students could also unite as the future of the continent. Her speech was greeted with thunderous applause. Sylvie notices Tesha on stage, realizes that it is her mother, and tells Arthur to greet her. Art wonders why Tesha is his mother. Then Elijah asks Art beside him. Elijah, who seems fascinated by Tesha, confesses that she is in love. Art finds it strange that Elijah's reaction is different from usual, but Elijah insists that Tesha is different from other girls. Elijah wonders how Art knows that Tesha has changed so much. Elijah complains because he feels Art knows Tesha personally, just as Art knows Princess Kathleen and Prince Curtis. Elijah feels like he wasn't invited to their introduction. Art asks Elijah to stop imagining. After the orientation program, the new students leave. Elijah notices Arthur petting Sylvie. He feels that Art is not paying attention or does not care. Elijah and Art witness an argument between Nicholas, a senior student, and Brosnian, a new student of the dwarf race. Nicholas demeans Brosnian and provokes a duel. Art comments on the blatant racism. Brosnian accepts the duel. They both activate the school-given artifact to create a dual barrier. Art explains that school-distributed artifacts can create a barrier for their users for official duels within the school. Nicholas and Brosnian respectively summon their weapons, a sword and an axe. Elijah encourages Brosnian. He sees that Nicholas has a dark red magic core, while Brosnian has a black magic core. The duel begins. Elijah criticizes Brosnian's blunt-looking weapon. Art explains that Nicholas' ability to control the ground as an augmentation and manipulate the ground well, despite his red magic core, shows talent and hard training. Nicholas attacked Brosnian using a sharp stone slab. Brosnian and Nicholas attack each other quickly. Nicholas kept controlling the ground to avoid Brosnian's attack. Nicholas gets annoyed and attacks Brosnian with an earth pole. Nicholas manages to knock Brosnian down and taunts him. Elijah sees that the duel is over because the barrier is broken, but Nicholas doesn't seem to want to stop. He sees this as an opportunity to be a hero. Arthur realizes Tesha's presence and feels misunderstood. Elijah is angry at Art for thwarting his chance to shine. Nicholas is angry that Art is bothering him and threatens to beat him up. Art thinks Nicholas is bullying Brosnian and declares the duel over. Nicholas does not accept this. Sylvie spits on Nicholas and challenges him. Nicholas gets angry and wants to attack her. Tesha appears and asks if you dare. Curtis, Art, and their friends are surprised to see Tesha. Tesha and the other two student council members arrive. Tess, reflecting on Art's absence from the speech and opening ceremony. She thinks about how to behave if she meets Art and imagines several scenarios, ranging from being cold to being more friendly. She also imagines the possibility of Art finding her first. Tess was pensive, then realized someone was calling Ketu Chief. A man and a girl approached her, asking how she was. Are you feeling unwell? Tess said that she was fine. She has a lot of things to do today. Tess sees two students, Nicholas from House Drail and a red-haired student who seems to be a first-year commoner. She remembers Master Goodsky's words about Art's presence in the school. There is tension between Nicholas and Art. Nicholas challenges Art, which worries Tess and Clive. Tess appears and breaks up the argument. Nicholas explains that he is dueling with Brosnian, but the first-year student interrupts. Tess then asks what happened. Arthur and Lelia apparently know each other because their fathers have worked together for a long time. Art explains that they live together. Tess was surprised. Tess is confused by the situation. Clive questions Nicholas about his actions. He warns Nicholas about the consequences of his actions, including possible expulsion from school. Tess adds that Nicholas could have seriously hurt Arthur. Tess again asks Nicholas if he dares to challenge her. Nicholas finally apologizes and admits his mistake. Nicholas still looks upset. but Tess tells him to leave. Tess reprimands Arthur for fighting on the first day of school. Arthur explains that Nicholas almost hurt him. Tess asks if Arthur realizes the consequences if the situation escalates. Arthur points out Brosnian's injuries and says that if Art doesn't distract him, Brosnian will get hurt worse. Arthur is about to leave, but Clive holds him back. Clive reprimands Arthur for being rude to Tess. Tess tries to stop Clive. Arthur asks what Clive is doing. Clive falls down because Arthur threw him. Tess is shocked to see Arthur throwing Clive. Lelia checks on Clive, who has fallen. Elijah is about to apologize to Tess, but she ignores him. Tasha is surprised by Arthur's attitude. Tess bangs her head against the wall and mutters that everything is a mess. Tess sits on her bed and reflects on the day's events. She blames Master Goodsky for making her student council president. She feels that if she had not been student council president, she would not have had to be fair to all the students and could have met Arthur right away. Clive comes to Tess's room to see how she is. Tess says that she is fine. Clive is upset that Arthur is rude to Tess. Tess tells him to calm down because the problem is over. Tess sighs and comments on Arthur's useless good looks. She imagines that many classmates will approach Arthur. Clive peeps in and asks where Arthur is. Arthur and his roommate discuss the incident with Tess. Arthur is still thinking about the incident. Someone knocks on Arthur's bedroom door. Arthur opens the door and finds an old woman there. It turns out to be Director Goodsky, who asks if he can come in. When Arthur opens the door, Elijah turns around and he is very surprised to see Director Goodsky. Elijah, bowing his head respectfully, says that it is an honor to meet Director Goodsky in person. Director Goodsky smiles and says that he has heard great things about Elijah from Vincent. Arthur invites him in. Director Goodsky enters. Elijah looks at them and says, "I'll go downstairs and get you a drink." Director Goodsky reminds Arthur to call her Cynthia, but Arthur refuses. Cynthia says that Arthur's bond is not the only one that has changed, then asks if Arthur is using a seal because he can only sense which attribute is wind and earth. Arthur scratches his head, and Cynthia says that she is not disappointed at not being able to show him off as her favorite Four-Element student. Arthur explains that he makes troublesome enemies when he becomes an adventurer and doesn't want to arouse suspicion, at least for now. Cynthia looks at Arthur and thinks that she is almost worried who Arthur's real enemies will be in the future. Arthur thought it was an unpleasant statement to say to a preteen boy who had just started his school life. Cynthia apologizes. Arthur tells her not to worry about it, then asks for Cynthia's help to take a high-level mana theory class, especially one on deviance. Cynthia says it's not too difficult, but she thinks one of the main reasons Arthur is attending this academy late is to fit in with his peers. Arthur said he would take those classes in addition to the usual ones with students his age, and that he was just a little impatient to learn more about deviant mana manipulation. Cynthia agrees to help. Cynthia even offers Arthur permission to observe a mock battle of high-class wizards, and Arthur asks what her purpose is. Just then, Elijah returns with their drinks. Elijah scolds Arthur for being rude to Director Goodsky, but Director Goodsky explains that he has ulterior motives and asks Arthur if he knows about the student council. Cynthia explains that if the student council is the shield of the school, then she decided this year to make sword. Cynthia asks Arthur to join the discipline committee. Arthur is surprised and asks if it is something a first-year student should do, considering he is not even a battle mage. Cynthia explains that the discipline committee is responsible for keeping the peace and enforcing the rules in the school. Cynthia says the rules. Arthur offers not to join and learns on his own from the books in the library. Cynthia explains that the books are not accessible to lower grade students, and even for upper grade students, Arthur has to show that he is a deviant, which he cannot do now. Cynthia explains that the members of the discipline committee are chosen for their strengths, so Arthur will have peers that he can train with regularly and learn from. Cynthia also offers access to a private training facility. Arthur asks if that means anything. Cynthia says that she turned down housewives who insisted on giving Lucas a spot in the hopes that Arthur would join. Arthur realizes that Cynthia really prepared everything. Arthur asks which rich training facility, and Cynthia says it is already done. She gives Arthur the uniform of the disciplinary committee. Arthur is upset that Cynthia already knows he will accept. Cynthia tells Arthur to make up with the student council president, Tesha, his childhood friend. Elijah is surprised that Tesha is Arthur's childhood friend. Arthur apologizes to Elijah for not telling him earlier. Elijah is okay, and suddenly one of their colleagues says that he also has a childhood friend. Elijah looks uncomfortable with the statement and Arthur looks surprised. Elijah reveals the name of his friend's childhood friend, Helgarth. Elijah asks Arthur if he is going to start flirting with the gods. Arthur denies he has ever flirted with anyone. Elijah comments that Arthur is very strange. His friends speculate that Arthur secretes attractive pheromones. Elijah says that's why Arthur likes him, because Elijah is weird too. Arthur leaves and Elijah chases after him. Elijah tells Arthur that the rumors about him are spreading. Arthur says, "I'm very popular." Elijah calls him weird. Charles Ravenport interrupts Arthur's lunch, saying that Elijah is wasting. Charles introduces himself and offers Elijah to join his group. Arthur mishears Charles' surname as Ravenpoop, and Arthur misunderstands. Charles is angry that Arthur is making fun of the nobles. Elijah says that Charles looks down on his friends and that they are all witches in this academy. Charles disagrees and says there is a difference between him and them. Elijah says that even the student council says not to treat each other differently, and Charles says the only way for Elijah to realize the difference is to witness it firsthand. Charles attacks Arthur, but Arthur quickly dodges. Charles is surprised. Charles cannot believe that Arthur can move so quickly and tries to attack him again. Elijah appears to be defending himself and Arthur. Suddenly there is a plant that binds Charles. Charles is surprised. He looks shocked and tries to break free while shouting, "What is this? Let go of me." The tendrils appear strong and pull her upwards, restricting her movement. The vine-trapped Charles is still struggling to break free, his facial expression showing frustration and anger. He thinks, "This plant, is there any student who can use deviant magic this powerful, or is it Master's doing?" Arthur and Elijah look at Charles, who is trapped by the vine, with a surprised expression. Charles said, "Hey, let me go." Arthur looks back. He knows it was Tesha. Arthur smiles. Arthur is seen thinking, "Now, what should I do to him?" holding his chin. The bound Charles looks frightened and screams as Arthur gets closer. His facial expression turns more serious, and he thinks, this pressure. Why does this scholar boy feel different from before? Arthur stands with a sharp gaze. He said, "You, the son of a noble house who likes to puff out his chest and show off your wealth and power." The bound Charles grinned and said, "Ha! There's nothing shameful about putting trash like you in its place." Elijah looked worried as he muttered, "What should I do? He's bullying him. Should I join in?" Arthur calmly replied, "Is that so?" and added, "In that case, allow me the honor of teaching you an important lesson." Charles scoffed, "I am unarmed and bound. What can you do with all those witnesses who saw Ha?" Arthur raised his hand, radiating magical energy. He said, "Something even more cruel to you boys than physical harm." Charles said, "You think a nameless boy like you can get loose after using magic too?" And suddenly Arthur pulled Charles' pants that were being tied. Charles' facial expression changed to surprise. The other students looked shocked and shouted, "Look! Ooh, disgusting and lots to see." Elijah yelled, "Shut up, all of you. Don't look," and Arthur said, "I'll go." Elijah replied, "Huh? Oh yeah, sure." Outside the hall, in the moonlight, Tesha sits on a bench. Arthur approaches her. Arthur says, "Thanks for your help there." Tesha replies, "I know you didn't need it." They both fall silent. Arthur looks nervous and thinks, "What should I say in this situation?" He then tries to apologize. "I'm sorry, but Tesha suddenly hits his head hard while saying, "I'm sorry, our Tesha is in pain." Arthur holds his chin. He says, I think I heard my chin crack earlier. Then he asks Tesha, "Are you crying?" Tesha replies, "Shut up." Tesha said, "That's because it hurts so much." Arthur looked worried. Does it really hurt that much? Indeed, look how swollen it is. He gently stroked Tesha's head. Tesha said, "I thought you hated me." Arthur replied while stroking her hair, "Even if I am angry with you, I will never hate you, Tess. I don't want that at all." Tesha replied, "I don't want you to be angry with me." Tesha continued, "I guess I'm still trying to understand this whole student council president thing." Elijah returns and accidentally sees them alone together and is surprised to come back. Arthur mutters, "What's that stupid sibling thinking right now?" Sylvie returns and she is very happy to see Tesha. Arthur says, "Would you like to take a short walk with me?" Arthur walks with Tesha while talking. Tesha murmurs he's changed a lot since I last saw him. Even the way he moves, it feels so meaningful, and his face. Tesha said to herself, "Damn, I envy that woman named Jasmine. I wish I could adventure with Arthur for 2 years." Arthur glances at Tesha and says, "Is something wrong?" Tesha replied, "No, absolutely nothing, ha ha ha." Arthur returns to his room to find Elijah hiding under the covers. "Welcome." Arthur was surprised. "Oh my god." Elijah said, "Have a seat, sir, and please explain well what I witnessed before." Arthur replied with a frightened "Okay." They talked while sleeping in their respective beds. Elijah said, "Even if you two were childhood friends, I don't believe the lunar goddess rested her head on your shoulder." Arthur replied, "Lunar goddess? Did you just get that name?" Elijah said, "You touched her. You sat next to her." Arthur throws a pillow right in Elijah's face saying, "Go to sleep."